Arrival. Written and read by Phil Owen. The spaceship descended onto the fertile soil below. Teppel was surprised that the immense weight of it didn't crush the ground below. However, the ship landed softly, and its engines gave off only a light breeze. Teppel, one of the few who was wary of the alien visitors, was one of the Lutians of Lutios. Lutios was a planet of rare quality. It had both nature and constructed cities. The Lutians were fairly advanced in their technology, but were a cautious race by nature. They would never leave their homeworld, not risking deep space exploration as other races like the human beings of Eden apparently do. Teppel looked over at Pera, the object of his affections. Like all Lutians, her skin shone a subtly luminous green, not a sharp green like the leaves on the trees. This green was a small skin pigmentation that shone through their bodies, like a small light. It made them rather beautiful, in an oddly surreal way. Pera, however, by Lutian standards, was very attractive. She could have the pick of any mate she wanted, but she chose to remain single. And the only male she ever confided in was Teppel. Teppel saw this as both a blessing and a curse. It meant he could spend lots of time with her, but it also gave him the impression that she never thought of him romantically, more like a brother. Pera, her yellow hair sprawled in the gentle wind from the spacecraft, looked over at Teppel and smiled a loving smile showing her white teeth. Teppel always wondered if he looked rather dazed when she did this. Pera, like everyone else, was extremely excited to have visitors. After all, Lutios was a far-off planet that had never been explored before. The Lutians, although too paranoid to leave it, had always wanted to meet alien lifeforms, so when their satellites picked up the ship's energy signature, they were overjoyed. The scientists had predicted the ship would land in Splot Square, and they were right. It was a place of immense history and importance, having been left bare after the first and only war on this planet. It was considered almost sacred, but of course the visitors wouldn't know this, so you could hardly blame them for landing there. Teppel watched with everyone else as the ship finally landed completely, and the engines shut down. Everything was still for a moment. Even the bright blue birds in the sky looked on in fascination. Pera was nearly bouncing with excitement. Her little brother, Timmet, was holding her hand. He was barely in his tweens, and was completely transfixed by the alien craft. A few people gasped involuntarily when a hatch opened slowly, and a ramp slowly descended from the hole in the ship to the ground a small distance from the crowds. Teppel began to doubt his skepticism. Maybe they did come in peace. It was only the one ship, so it wasn't an invasion force, so perhaps an exploration party. The Lutians began to cheer. Tycho, the senator of Town 136, each town on Lutios was numbered, not named, stood on a small portable pedestal that his aides carried for him. His voice rang out, a deep tenor voice. "We, the Lutian people, welcome you, strangers to our world." Tycho paused, staring bemused at the lack of activity from the alien craft. "We invite you to join us. We mean you no malice, and wish to throw a ball in your honor." Still no activity. Teppel wondered if the visitors were wounded. He supposed the ship could have landed on autopilot. "Please," Tycho continued, "come out and say greetings." Suddenly, something began to descend the ramp. It was strange, mechanical in appearance, but constantly twitching, as if it were alive and sentient. It had a domed appearance to it, with a single stalk at the top, which surveyed all around like an eye. The vertical oblong device had two protrusions, one long, one short. One that had a small black sucker-like object. Teppel nearly giggled. It looked rather like one of their lavatory cleaning devices. The other was slightly shorter, with small spires leading towards the tip of the cylindrical object. There were lots of small sections on the machine, a grill section that looked like it provided ventilation, a middle turret-like section that held the two arms, and a lower section with many spheres all around it. The machine moved fairly slowly, but eerily smoothly, like it glided. There were no visible feet, or wheels, or treads. The machine was purple in colour, with a half-moon symbol on its casing. Not a particularly frightening hue, the purple, but the machine's movements compensated. The Lutians had fallen silent, completely amazed by the machines before them. Another one started to follow behind it. Its eye and sucker were not as jerky as the first, but the smaller arm was extremely lively. "We are sorry. Is that your true form, or are these machines defense weapons intended to scout us and see if we are hostile?" Tycho said rather amazedly. The voice that replied was extremely disturbing. It had a grating quality to it, and it resounded through a mechanical synthesizer that distorted the voice somewhat. The result was a rather apathetic sound.
"This is our true form,"
the first machine spoke. Teppel could tell it was that one, as there were two small lights on the top of each one's dome. They flashed in synchronization with the words.
"What is this planet's name?"
it said. The voice was deep and almost hysterical sounding. Teppel thought it was almost as like it was scared of him. A funny thought, Teppel reflected, as he always thought of his species as the mice of the galaxy, hardly something to fear.
"The planet's name is Lutios. My name is Tycho, mayor of Town 136. We wish to assist you in any way necessary. We do hope you come in peace, and hope that we can make good relations between our cultures. What are you called?"
Tycho asked, in his political stride now.
"We are the
machine began, its speech cut off, and its dome swung until its eye stalk reached its comrade.
"We are the Daleks,"
the second one said. Its voice, although more of a natural register, retained the harshness of its fellow.
"We do not,"
the Dalek cut off again.
"Peace, Daleks! I'm sorry, you do not what?"
Tycho asked. The small protrusions of both Daleks revolved towards Tycho. Perhaps Teppel had been mistaken. He pondered if that was the eye instead. The Dalek began again.
"We do not come in peace,"
the Dalek shouted loudly. The next thing Teppel knew, he was shielding his eyes from a blinding light that had emitted from the smaller arm and towards Tycho.
"No!"
Teppel shouted, but it was too late. The beam struck Tycho. He let loose a blood-curdling scream and fell off of his platform with a thud on the ground. The Lutians began to flee, screaming with fear.
"Move and you will be exterminated!"
the hysterical tone of the first Dalek called out, but the Lutians did not listen. The people began to flee in all directions.
"Exterminate!"
the Dalek shouted. The beams from both Dalek guns began to erupt towards the fleeing Lutians. Teppel quickly made his way towards Pera, shoving his way past his scared fellows. "Pera!" Teppel shouted, his voice rich with fear. He finally reached her as she tried to flee, with her little brother in tow. He was sobbing. "Pera, we must get out of here!" "Why do this?" Pera screamed. "Why kill us?" Tears ran from her eyes. "We did nothing to them!" "We must find somewhere safe to hide," Teppel said urgently. Suddenly, they saw a figure emerge from the ship. It was humanoid, but armoured, and on its back were two mighty wings. A horn protruded from the figure's head, who scanned the fleeing Lutians with intense eyes. He turned to the nearest Dalek and sternly called, "Cease fire!" The Daleks instantly stopped firing. The Daleks turned to him.
"General Ryuk, standing orders are to subjugate the natives."
The one called Ryuk replied simply, but firmly. "That does not aid our mission here. We are to retrieve the device with as little bloodshed as possible."
"Very well. At least the Lutians now know to fear us. They shall not impede our mission."
Ryuk shook his head impatiently. His hair jostled with the movement. Teppel, fleeing with Pera and her little brother, noticed the humanoid, the one they called Ryuk, had a tail. He was an abomination, and yet somehow beautiful, like an angel. He wondered, as he got Pera and Timmet to safety, who this Ryuk was, and what the Daleks' mission on their home was. He had a feeling that the answer would be as fascinating as it was terrifying.